Evening, Coach Brian here, Geomagnetic Earthwatch on Sunday, May 21st, 2023 on our planet. Hope you're all well. So, I want to talk about a controversial subject. Controversial to the handlers of this and other platforms. Therefore, I will be speaking in code. Most of you who've been following me are going to know what I'm talking about. About 2 or 3 different subjects, which I believe, in my personal opinion, all come together, and that is one. The development of this our immune system and the increased levels of ultraviolet radiation coming in because of the geomagnetic excursion weakening our protective magnetosphere. Now, one moment, please. Hi, buddy.
She wants new batteries. It's low battery.
Okay, hang on, buddy. One moment, please. Interruption. So these are charged. Okay,
Triple A?
Okay, I got you back to my video.
Triple A, right? They're triple A, right? Okay, let me buy that.
Totally unscheduled. Happens all the time. I got no problem with it. I don't get angry, unlike some guy I find highly suspicious who did a scripted interruption with his daughter because he saw my video. Come on, Ben. Fool. Anyway, let's get back to it. So first, in my previous life, I did occupational first aid at the highest level. I maintained that certification for 28 years. But because I wanted to know more about the human body, I did the equivalent of pre-med study. In my own personal notes typed out was quite literally a binder an inch thick. I wanted to know more, so I have somewhat of an understanding, more than most, of what this does. To be clear, I hope most of you realize by now, very clearly, this was developed first with the mRNA. Then, as evidence directly suggests, the EMEC was then developed man-made, so they had a reason to use this. So, let's go through what this is.
She wanted me to return the old ones.
Yeah, I'll put them on the charger later, okay?
Yeah.
Thanks, buddy.
Bye, bye.
Suck it up, Ben. You can't do better than me. Anyway, get back to it. Let's go through the difference between the old standard vaccine and the new substance. Now, the normal vaccine is the virus in itself, although in a dead form. So your autoimmune system will recognize the virus, develop its antibodies, and attack that virus. Now, that virus can be the flu. It could be a foreign substance. It could be a pollen. It could be a venom from a snake bite. Now, when they give you the vaccine, for example, the flu vaccine, they inject it into your shoulder. It is not intended to enter into your bloodstream. So your autoimmune system will detect that foreign antigen. Now, we have 2 types of antigens, people. We have a foreign antigen introduced from the outside. As I said, it could be a viral, it could be bacterial, it could be a pollen, it could be a snake bite, foreign. But we also have something called the self-made antigens that the autoimmune system will recognize as not harmful to the body and will not attack it. I'll get into that later. So the typical vaccine is the actual virus in itself in the dead form they inject into you. So your body will develop the antibodies. Now, I'm trying to keep this as simplified as I can so you understand where I'm going with all of this. Second, when you introduce an antigen, now again, an antigen is a foreign substance. So when you get in the flu shot, you have what's called an anti-inflammatory or an inflammatory response. Redness, heat, swelling. That's why your shoulder will be inflamed. It'll be red, it'll be hot, right? It'll be swelling for a few days after you get the injection. It's the inflammatory response. So again, it is not supposed to be injected into the bloodstream. This is why there is the subject of, was there proper aspiration when they started doing this? And aspiration is they'll inject it into your shoulder, but then they pull it back just a little bit to make sure it has not penetrated into a bloodstream. When they pull it back, if they have blood going in there, they know you hit a bloodstream and you do not inject it. Aspiration. So the mRNA, if it's introduced into the bloodstream, you end up with what's called systemic circulation, systemic throughout the entire body, everywhere. All tissues, all cells. Now, so the mRNA, if it gets into the bloodstream, will introduce its lipid nanoparticles, very small, to the interior walls of the blood vessel and attach themselves to it so they can introduce its RNA messenger into the cells, using the cells and their genetic material to make copies of the antigen. So it goes right to the nucleus of the cell, the message. It produces its own antigen and sends that out to the surface of the cell in the case of the blood vessels. I'm going to try and show you an example. This is your blood vessel. These are the membranes of the blood vessels. This is the inside wall of the blood vessel. If the mRNA gets inside your blood vessels, it will attach itself to the inside lining of the vessel, send its message to the nucleus, and that will create the antigen and implant the antigen, the green dots, to the lining of the blood vessel. You need to listen carefully to what I'm saying, and I'll repeat myself a few times. two things happen normally. First, with the antigen, you will get that inflammatory response. You will get the redness. You will get the swelling. If it is something that the autoimmune system does not recognize, or if it recognizes or think it's a foreign antigen, these green dots will be like a red dots, flashing strobes saying, hey, here I am, come and get me. Stay with me. Now, this gets a little bit complicated. One moment, please. I have a few notes. Most of it's in my brain. It takes a hell of a lot of study to bring all this together. So self-antigens are receptors on the surface of cells, including blood vessel walls. The immune system uses self-antigens as identifiers to recognize a cell that belongs to the body. It is protecting. These self-antigens, the ones produced within the cell, inform the immune system that it's okay, these can be tolerated. It's all right, don't come and attack us. So I'm going to be going back and forth, back and forth. So subsequent boosters have suggested or revealed that the subsequent boosters inhibit the immune system's memory. Therefore, it doesn't recognize it as a self-antigen produced by the body, as opposed to a foreign antigen. Hence, a lot of reports of long, fibrous strands of whatever being pulled out of blood vessels. Some of them are feet long, yards long, during autopsies. So again, the mRNA introduced into the bloodstream will introduce its lipid nanoparticles, the tiniest of particles, to the interior wall of the blood vessel and attach themselves, introducing its RNA into the cell membrane, using the cell's own genetic code to produce the antigen and send it back outside to the lining of the cell of the blood vessel. If the autoimmune system does not recognize it as it's okay, you're part of the body, it will send the antibodies out to attack and destroy those cells, as well as the inflammatory response. So I'm going to go back to some germopathologists examining very young, healthy, deceased. Found traces of the mRNA spike protein from this, not from on the surface of the myocardium. The myocardium, myo relates to muscle, cardium, heart. They also found out that these young people have been dying from myocarditis. Any term ending in itis is inflammation of the heart muscle. Young people have been dying suddenly from sudden cardiac arrests from this inflammation. So if your autoimmune system recognizes antigen as something that was produced by the body, which in fact it was. That is the purpose of the mRNA. And says, no, it's okay. We're not going to come and attack you. The inflammation does. The inflammatory response does. Just like when you get your flu shot. Redness, swelling, bulging. What do you think is going to happen if you have redness, swelling, bulging on your heart muscle? Very delicate tissue. It's going to compress it and it's going to stop it suddenly. If you've had subsequent boosters and they keep on coming after you, they want to jab you and jab you and jab you. I understand that inhibits the autoimmune response. It doesn't think. It can't think. Not a perfect weapon, huh? Let's continue. So again, the autoimmune system will only attack foreign antigens. Here's the scary part, people. I understand they're talking about making everyday standard vaccines, such as the influenza vaccine and all other vaccines, mRNA vaccines, hence the reason why they're building massive production facilities in the United States, England, Canada, and Australia. So this, it's gone, man. It's gone. We're all leading our healthy lives, right? They still want to come after you and jab you. Let's go over some possible reasons why. Let's get into what's happening with our weakened magnetosphere, which has been degrading and depleting our protective ozone layer, which protects us from the harsh ultraviolet radiation. And the effects of ultraviolet radiation on human as well as plant DNA and our immune system. So ultraviolet radiation promotes the malignant transformation of cells. Turns them into cancerous cells. We now have increased levels of sea levels, ultraviolet radiation coming in. As I've discussed more so over Canada and northern Canada, where we have our wildfires. And UV radiation also suppresses the ability of the human immune system to effectively detect and attack cancer cells. Another biological consequence of UV radiation induced immunosuppression is the loss of immunosurveillance on newly generated cancerous cells and on cells in general. UV radiation suppresses the immune system's ability to recognize cancerous cells. And I submit antigen as well. You see maybe where I'm going with this? Therefore, newly developed cancer cells go unchecked, unrecognized. Under normal circumstances, our autoimmune system can help to fight cancer, but now it doesn't recognize the cancer cells, and I question if the increased levels of ultraviolet radiation, which does affect our autoimmune system, interferes with its recognition of self-antigens. So if you introduce a substance, systemic, whereby it tells the cells of our body to produce an antigen and sends it back out to the surface lining membrane of that cell. But our autoimmune system doesn't recognize it as an internal, it's okay, antigen, and goes out to attack it. Never mind the inflammatory response from an antigen. Such as the lining of the myocardium, the heart lining, the muscle in our young who die suddenly. Is there a link to the current geomagnetic excursion, which do results in extinction level events of some species, and the sudden push to develop this first? Oh, and it's 95% effective, which is not. And then they have to develop a reason to give you this Wuhan. Is Mr. John Moore, who was interviewed by Brighteon, was he correct? Bringing it all together? The coming pole shift. And this? I'm putting other pieces of the puzzle together with the ultraviolet radiation coming in our immune systems. And now they want to change all the old school vaccines, which something has not been tested and yet suggested causes sudden deaths. Here's another scary part, people. Please pay attention. In exactly 12 months from now, the World Health Organization is going to be ratifying serious changes, if approved by the 194 member states. Whereby, if they feel it necessary, and it does not have to be a pandemic, it does not have to be an endemic, they can mandate force these on you. They will have the power to, and it doesn't matter what country you belong to. Lockdowns. Or, we feel it necessary to give you this, so, whatever their bullshit reasons. Mandatory. This is not supposed to enter into the bloodstream, or is it? Whose contents do they refuse to tell you what it is? Could it be cellular specific? I suggest you tune in to Mr. John Campbell of the United Kingdom. He's becoming a lot more aware of what's going on, but he has to remain cryptic, as I do. He's a brilliant man, he's a good man, but I don't think he's clued in, doesn't understand anything about what's going on with our geomagnetic excursion, our weakening magnetosphere. And the 12,000-year event that is soon upon us. So if you have children, for example, and it's time for their immunizations, you better do a lot of research to make sure it hasn't been changed to the mRNA substance unproven. My understanding is that they have already suggested or will be doing changing the influenza vaccine to the mRNA with only 50 people studied. Ultraviolet radiation, immune system suppression. It cannot recognize self-made antigens, inflammatory response. If this is going to your brain, and you have an inflammatory response in that blood vessel, the swelling, no more blood for you, no more oxygen. In 4 to 6 minutes, you're dead.